Hi everybody, this is multiplying and dividing rational numbers part 2. So in this video we'll just cover multiplying and our rational numbers will only be decimals. To review, when we're multiplying numbers, if we have the same signs, the answer is always positive. So if we multiply a negative times a negative, it will always be a positive. The opposite of that, if we have different signs, the answer is always negative. A positive times a negative is a negative. That's why this chart is very, very helpful. We put positives along our diagonal, fill in the rest with negatives, and it'll show these two relationships. Positive, positive is a positive. Negative times a positive is a negative. Negative times a negative is also a positive. Okay, here are some examples. Let's start with example number 1 together. Now, it may have been a little bit of time since you've used a longer step to do multiplication with decimals. So the first thing is we need to make sure that we align our numbers on the right side. So when we were adding, we line up the decimals, but for multiplication, we need to line up our numbers on the right side. So if I have negative 6.3 times negative 0.6, I'm going to ignore the signs until the end. Alright, I've lined up my numbers on the right side. I've ignored the negative. I have 6.3 times 0.6. So we'll start with the 1 place here. 6 times 3 is 18, so I have 8 carry the 1. 6 times 6 is 37, or 6 times 6 is 36, plus 1 gets me 37. So it looks like I have 378. The second thing to remember about multiplying decimals is we have to think about how many place values we have behind the decimal. Both of these are in their tens places, so 1 place beyond the decimal. So I need to move my decimal here, 1, 2. So my answer there is 3.78. Now let's talk about the sign. A negative times a negative is always a positive, so my final answer here is 3 7/78. It's positive because a negative times a negative is a positive. Let's try example 2 together now. This is where it's really important to remember we're not lining up decimals, but we're lining up our numbers on the right. So I have 2.51. Again, we're ignoring the signs, and 3.6. See how in this case our decimals don't line up? We're going to ignore the decimals first and just treat this like a 3-digit number times a 2-digit number. We'll start with the 1 place. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 5 is 30. That's 0, carry the 3. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 is 15. This looks like 1,506. Let's now talk about the tens place. Since we've moved 1 place to the left, I need to move my number 1 place to the left by putting a 0 there. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 5 is 15. That's 5, carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Now that I have these two numbers right here, multiplication tells me I can add. 6 plus 0 is 6. 0 plus 3 is 3. 5 plus 5 is 0, carry the 1. 1 plus 1 plus 7 is 2. Sorry, 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 7 is 9. So now I have 9036. This is not 9036. I had to figure out where's my decimal. I have 1, 2 places behind the decimal here, 1 place beyond the decimal here. That's 3 in total. So my final answer should have 1, 2, 3 numbers beyond the decimal, which makes sense. 2.5 times 3.6 should be about 9. So I have 9.036. One last step is to make sure, okay, I have negative times a positive, so my final answer here is negative 9.036. Let's try one more together. These are 3-step problems. The order of multiplication does not matter. We just have to make sure we're still paying attention to the rules of order of operations. In this case, we have absolute values. Absolute values get to go up in the list next with parentheses. They behave like parentheses too because we first need to do what's on the inside of the absolute value. So I have an absolute value here. I have parentheses. This is just telling me this is negative 100 times 0.1. Now, if you forget all your tens rules, this is also the same thing as 1/10. If I have 1/10 times negative 100, that's negative 100 divided by 10, which is negative 10. I still need to take the absolute value of that though, and then multiply it by 7.2. The absolute value of negative 10 is 10. Then I'm going to multiply it by negative 7.2. Multiplying anything by 10 means I'm just moving my decimal. This would move my decimal, still a negative 7.2. I would move my decimal one to the right, so my final answer is negative 72, because a positive times a negative is a negative. Whenever you're doing 3-step ones, you have to follow order of operations, but after that, then we just do our multiplication, usually left to right. I would also take the time to refresh myself on all the tens rules, multiplying by 10, multiplying by 1/10 as well. Let's try a real life application together. All right, Carol's recipe calls for 2.5 cups of flour. If she wants to make 3.75 batches of cookies, how much flour will she use? So, important word here, if she wants to make 3.5 batches of cookies, of always means multiplication. So I want 3.75 of 2.5 cups. Or in other words, I want 2.5 cups of flour 3.75 times. So this is just multiplication here. Again, we need to make sure here though that we're lining up our right side, not our decimals again. So it looks like we have 375 times 25, so we'll start with the 1 place. 5 times 5 is 25, that's 5, carry the 2. 5 times 7 is 35, plus 2 is 37. That's 7, carry the 3. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 3 is 18. Let's keep going here. We're going to go 1 place over. Start with a 0 here then. 2 times 5 is 10, carry the 1. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 1 is 15. That's 5, carry the 1. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Let's go ahead and add these two. 5 plus 0 is 5, 7 plus 0 is 7, 8 plus 5 is 13, that's 3, carry the 1. 1 plus 1 plus 7 is 9. We end here with 9,375. Not exactly our final answer. We have 2 places beyond the decimal here, 3 here. That means I need to move my decimal 1, 2, 3 place values beyond. I'm left here with 9.375 cups then. There are no negatives from the start, so this is a positive times a positive, which will end with a positive. The next video notes will cover division of fractions.